Welcome to my tutorial. We will be making a little 2D game, the start of a 2D game, moving a character around. Hopefully this will allow you to see how similar our programming for 2D and 3D games are. Let's go from our Unity hub installed on our computer, and we're going to create a new project. I'm just going to call this something like 2D test project. We're going to save it out. There are two options here, 3D or 2D. We're going to pick the 2D, though really the difference between them is just a few different setup things that make things a little bit easier to see things in 2D, and I'll show you what that means. So we're going to create our new 2D project. This tutorial hopefully will help you familiarize yourself with a bunch of different concepts and coding stuff that we've done already in class. Don't worry if coding is in general quite overwhelming. It's sort of the nature of learning a new language. You just have to get exposed to it, and over time eventually there'll be a click. So it's just really a case of sticking with it. Alright, so here we've got our 2D Unity scene. Here we can see the scene view is currently in 2D. There's this little 2D button here. We can click it on and off. This little 2D toggle. And really that is the only difference, that opening your project as a 2D project or a 3D project. That's really the only difference there. Everything else is the same. Now I'm using the 2020 version of Unity I have installed on my computer. Your version might look very slightly different. You know, these windows look different, but it's exactly the same. All the things are in the same place. We've got our scene view, our hierarchy view, our project view. Yours might have a different layout. We can go to window layouts. Here it is here, 2x3. This might be what your Unity looks like by default. You might have your project. Anyway, let's go ahead and make a 2D object in our hierarchy. Just like a 3D object that we can create, we're going to go to right click on our hierarchy, we're going to go to 2D object, and we're going to make a sprite. Now a sprite is not a fantastical magical creature like it is in different usages of the word. In this case the sprite is a 2D image that we're displaying. Rather unhelpfully, once we've created this new sprite, we still can't see an image. We're going to have to try and we're going to have to make an image or get an image. In this case, we want to go ahead and Google for a Rocketship sprite. Now, this is the beauty of making something very impromptu, is that we can just grab images from the internet and use them to our own amusement. Let's go ahead and click on this one. Can we download it? Download. I am indeed not a robot, or at least I like to think that I'm not. All right, here we go. We've got our no, that's history. Whoops. We want to go to downloads. All right, here we go. And we've got our space rocket. We're going to go ahead and drag in that image that we just downloaded into our Unity file. And we're going to drag it into our project. Now, your projects might be somewhere else, your project view, but we're going to drag it into our project view. And now we've got ourselves a lovely little Rocketship sprite. So just like we can assign values to variables by dragging things around in Unity, we can set the sprite variable, which is the image that will be shown by the sprite renderer, by dragging our sprite asset in, dropping it in. Oh my goodness, that's very large. We probably want our Rocketship to be a lot smaller. So we're going to change the scale value from 1 to what looks good, 1.2 maybe. All right, that looks a bit smaller. Maybe we want to make it even smaller. I'm going to go 0.1. We've got a tiny little Rocketship. Let's go ahead and play the game, and we can see our little Rocketship. So time to get this Rocketship to move. And one of the things that you'll be able to do with this tutorial, I highly recommend, is that at any point that you think, okay, have I done something? Does it make sense? Does it work? Pause the video, have a look at the code that we're about to make. So yeah, definitely pausing the video is going to be a big thing when you're following tutorials, and also other people's tutorials online as well. I'm going to go ahead and call this like player movement, and this is me making a script. I just go to add component. I'm going to type in the name of the script. Because it doesn't exist, we have the option here to make a new script, make sure our name doesn't have any spaces or numbers in it, and we're going to go ahead and create and add our new Rocketship script. Finally, we're going to double click on it to open it, and now we can start to think about what kind of things we'll need to get our ship to move. Well, just like in our 3D view, we're going to want to add a component to this. I'm also going to rename the object player. We're going to have to add our rigid body. Just like in 3D, we want to use physics. In this case, we're going to use 2D physics. So instead of a normal rigid body, it's going to be, a rigid body 2D. Again, we're going to search for the component and then add it to our object. Okay, so we need our script to be able to access that rigid body, the 2D rigid body, to make it move. So we're going to need a variable for that. We're going to call this public modifier so that we can access the variable in Unity, and the type of variable is going to be a rigid body 2D. We'll call it whatever we want. In this case, we'll call it like body for use, and that means that we'll now refer to this variable name wherever we want to refer to our rigid body so that we can move. Well, a rocket ship just probably moves, all the time. Maybe it's just flying through space. So instead of inputs, we're just going to say that every frame we're going to move it. In this case, we're going to add a force to our rigid body. Okay, now we need to put something in between these little brackets for our add force method that we're calling on our rigid body every frame in our update method. What direction do we want to move? Okay, well, let's see. We've got our rocket ship, and the rocket ship's facing a particular direction. Whenever I click on it, I zoom in and click on it on our screen view, and then go to our move tool, we can see that however we rotate the object, let's go to local, and we can see that however we rotate the object, its forward will be this green arrow here, which is the up direction on this transform. So let's not rotate it, but we're going to want to move our object going forwards all the time with our rocket ship moving in that particular direction. So that means we're going to have to try and find the value by going public transform, and this will be the transform to use. Oh, let's get a lowercase s, and the transform is going to just be its rotation, its position, and one of those values that will be contained within it is the up direction of that object, which means no matter how we rotate this, it will then return that relative value. So in this case, up, and you'll see what I mean in a moment. Let's run the game and let's see what happens. So when we run the game, we get this classic error, and also our spaceship falls out of the sky. So the first thing we're going to want to do is go to our rigid body and turn off our gravity scale. That's the thing that's causing us to fall. An interesting thing about our gravity in the 2D is instead of a tick box, it's now a value. In this case, we're going to set that value to 0. So hopefully our rocket ship won't fall out of the sky anymore. Okay, there we go. That's what we want. We are in space, after all, where there's no gravity. Well, in our game, there will be no gravity. The reason that we're getting this unassigned reference exception is because we haven't set up our variables correctly in Unity yet. We've got this transform where it says none transform. We've got our transform variable, and we've got our rigid body variable. We need to go ahead and drag our components into those variables, so it now knows, the script now has access to those components through those variables. All right, let's go ahead and run the game now. And we can see there goes our rocket ship flying off into space. Perfect. Now it's going a little bit too fast, so I'm going to go ahead and multiply the direction that we're going at with a particular speed. In this case, we're going to just use speed. Speed doesn't exist, so we'll make a variable so that it does exist. It's going to be a float speed. So now, because we're multiplying, our direction by speed, this will change how fast we go, and we can make that value, let's make that value less than 1, so that our speed is 0.5, and let's see how fast we go now. Still a bit too fast, but ultimately we can just tweak that value. We can put this all the way down to 0.1, and hopefully we'll go much slower now. And you can see we are accelerating because we're adding our force.